On today's Two on Your Side Town Hall, who's getting vaccinated in Western New York? We're looking at the county-by-county numbers as well as questions in Washington today for the companies making those shots.
Plus, you just heard about it as breaking news last half hour. No charges in the death of a man in Rochester. It made national headlines. We're going to talk with a local attorney about this decision that came down from the state AG involving police officers. That's coming up.
And why a decision on movie theaters that didn't change any rules in Western New York could actually have an impact on theaters here down the road.
A lot to get to. We're going to start today's town hall with some important updates on vaccines. We appreciate you being here. I'm Michael Wooten.
And I'm Kate Welshofer. So many of you have asked us why it's easier to book vaccine appointments in some areas compared to others. And it's difficult to get a complete answer, as we've seen, but we have found that there are some significant disparities geographically in terms of the shots.
Yeah, let's start here with the big picture. A little more than 12% of New York State's population has now received at least one dose of the vaccine, and you can see almost 7% have gotten both doses fully vaccinated. Those are the state averages, but it really does vary county by county. Erie County is doing better than the state average. You can see 13.5% of people here have gotten at least one dose.
Erie is one of only 2 counties in our entire region to be above that average. The other is Genesee County, with 12.6% of the population getting at least one dose. And look at the colors. All the others are below 12%. Allegheny County has the lowest in our region and in the entire state. Just 7.5% of people there have gotten at least one shot.
Yeah, it's a big difference. It made us wonder, is this a rural versus urban thing? And not really. We're going to show you the whole state again. Look at the green counties. Those are ones with above 16% immunized with a first shot. Hamilton County, we've circled there, it's doing the best in New York. More than 39% of people there have gotten at least one dose of the vaccine. And it just so happens to be the least populated county in the entire state, only about 4,400 residents. St. Lawrence, Franklin, Essex, and Warren counties are all nearby there. They are all also in green. They're doing much better than the state average of, again, around 13%.
And if we just look at raw numbers for our region, you can see in each county how many people got a first dose yesterday and how many got a second dose. We're at that point right now where a lot more people are getting the second dose because that is a priority, and still the supply is very limited.
I think it's really interesting to look at those numbers right there, Kate. Again, a big focus right now on second dose, and I guess that's just because, you know, we're 3 or 4 weeks past when all those people got their first dose, and so you got to get them the second one now.
Right, exactly. The time has come for them.
Yeah. All right. When we talk about the vaccine supply, who better to update us than the pharmaceutical manufacturers themselves? Today we heard directly from executives with Pfizer, Moderna, and the others as they testified before lawmakers about their immediate plans to, thankfully, boost supply of the vaccine.
Channel 2's Jeff Preval tells us those promises of more doses are providing some hope to people who are waiting their turn.
Because of vaccine shipping delays, Niagara County ran into an issue this week in getting people second doses.
If I hadn't received 1,000 doses yesterday, then I would have had problems with my second dose clinic I'm at now.
According to Niagara County's public health director, those 1,000 doses were actually first doses. He says the county got approval from the Western New York vaccine hub to use first doses as second doses.
First time we've had to do this. We just hope that doesn't happen again.
He's hopeful vaccine supply will increase within weeks. Today, top vaccine manufacturers testified on a virtual hearing with federal lawmakers. Both Pfizer and Moderna say they'll boost supply.
We expect to increase the number of doses available from approximately 4 to 5 million doses per week at the beginning of February to more than 13 million doses per week by the middle of March.
Booster shots are also being looked at.
We are going to be, or hope to initiate a study looking at the benefit of a booster in patients that have already received 2 doses of the vaccine.
Moderna wants to add more doses per vial.
Doing so would improve output by allowing us to complete manufacturing runs more quickly.
As for Johnson & Johnson's vaccine,
we are ready to begin shipping immediately and deliver enough single doses by the end of March to enable the vaccination of more than 20 million Americans.
Now, the FDA is reviewing Johnson & Johnson's single-dose vaccine. That vaccine will go before an FDA committee on Friday. It's possible that vaccine could be approved by the end of the week. In Buffalo, I'm Jeff Perval, Channel 2 News.
So a bit of hopeful news today, which we appreciate. But of course, well, the other issue here besides supply, Michael, is just the time of year. And there's been so much bad weather nationwide that's also had an impact on just trying to get the doses where they need to be.
Yeah, and luckily they're kind of getting close to making that back up. But yeah, I mean, one storm, and these are things that I guess you kind of don't anticipate, although it's the time of year maybe we should.
Right, for sure. We want to turn now to something that's getting a lot of attention in our region this evening, the case of Daniel Prude in Rochester. Police found him naked in the street in March of last year. His family said he suffered from mental illness, and while handcuffed, officers pinned him to the ground. He stopped breathing and eventually died. The medical examiner listed his cause of death as homicide caused by the physical restraint applied by police. Within the past hour, New York State Attorney General Letitia James announced that she presented the case to a grand jury, but it did not indict the officers on any criminal charges.
We presented the strongest case possible, but today, the grand jury decided not to indict any police officer on charges related to Daniel Prude's death. I know that the Prude family, the Rochester community, and communities across the country will rightfully be disappointed by this outcome.
All right, we want to talk about this now. Joining us live is attorney Barry Covert, one of the friends of this show, helping us understand a lot of these complex topics. Barry, I know this is short notice. We always appreciate your analysis. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Barry, first off, your reaction to this news, and can you kind of walk us through what the AG announced? We know you've been following it closely today.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised at the failure to indict the officers involved in this case. We watched the videos on numerous occasions when this first became public, I believe last September, and then over the last few weeks when it revived itself. And what we're facing here and what occurred, what the Attorney General is announcing is that in New York State, in order for you to bring an indictment, any felony charges against an individual or individuals, you have to seek a grand jury indictment. A grand jury is a group of individuals that are sworn in and secretly deliberate, and it's very secretive, as the Attorney General has said today. And they view all the evidence, and they don't make a determination as to whether there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but whether the majority of the grand jurors feel that there's enough evidence that the case should proceed with an indictment. And then if there's an indictment, then it could proceed to trial or to a plea. So what the Attorney General has announced today is that they did their investigation. They looked at all of the evidence as to what occurred on the 23rd, on the date of that this unfortunate death occurred, but also started 2 days earlier when Mr. Prude was traveling from Chicago to Rochester, but he was basically thrown off of a Amtrak train 2 days prior to his death because he was smoking cigarettes. And he did have interactions with the Depew police, as I read the reports. And they did find that he was not in any excited mode at that point. He was not out of control by any stretch. He did eventually apparently take a bus then to Rochester. And he stayed with his brother, who the next day after his arrival, because he was suddenly engaging in erratic behavior, had him called an ambulance to have him brought to Strong Memorial for a mental health evaluation. And he was brought into Strong Memorial. A doctor would normally have to sign off on this. The police are allowed to bring an individual who's going through some mental health crisis to a hospital for the evaluation. He stayed there for a period of time, was released late the evening prior to the morning that these events occurred. And then at about 3 in the morning or so on the date, at 3 a.m. on the date that this occurred, his brother again called the police and indicated he had left the house, and he was very worried because his brother was suicidal. His brother had taken PCP. was not fully dressed, and he was heading towards a railroad track, and they were concerned for him. So, and then there was later the police involvement that led to them putting the spit mask on his face and having him down on the ground after they did find him about a mile or so from his house. So the question then for the Attorney General, who is prosecuting the case under the executive laws now that require that where there's a death involving a civilian that was unarmed and it also involved the police department, the Attorney General then looks at it. They then have to present the case to the grand jury to determine whether the grand jury believes that there is sufficient evidence to proceed to an indictment of a crime, of criminality.
Yeah.
In this case, the grand jury found that there was not. And the Attorney General both has made that announcement, but has also given us many recommendations as to how the Attorney General feels that we should change the grand jury system, the grand jury secrecy, and the interactions between police and individuals.
Yeah, we're almost out of time, Barry, but let me ask you about that, because people always immediately wonder, you know, why didn't the grand jury indict? I mean, the video here, a lot of people were very disturbed by it. The reality is we will never know why the grand jury didn't indict because it is so secretive. The AG is saying perhaps there needs to be some reform to that, so maybe there's a little more sunshine on that process?
Yes, we won't know exactly why they didn't indict. We do know that in many instances where we'd have police interactions with individuals, that the grand juries typically are reluctant to indict unless there's clear evidence of criminality and intent. And that's just traditionally what has occurred, and that occurred in this case. But this is not a case where police went out of their way to pull over a black male. This is not similar to a lot of the cases that we've been encountering over the last few years with videotapes where it appears that there was some type of an unfair interaction. They were picking on an individual. Here it appears that the police were concerned because Mr. Prude himself had declared earlier that he had coronavirus and he was spitting, apparently they claim, and he was spitting all over the place. They needed to put a spit mask on him. They had him down on the ground, and apparently at that point the police may not have handled that situation perfectly when he was on the ground with a spit mask and when he vomited at that point. But the individual was also on, Mr. Prude was on PCP, and that can lead to a heart attack according to the experts. So there are a lot of factors here, and the grand jury felt as though, given all those factors involved, they apparently felt as though the officers did not engage in criminal behavior in how they interacted with him.
We are going to have to leave it there for tonight, but Barry Covert, we appreciate your perspective. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.